I was shown the site of two small forts where captured Africans were kept before being shipped to the New World. Once again, I had an emotional moment as I reflected on what would have happened on this very site not too long ago. A New Day Dawn, my solo journey into West Africa by Terry Lister.
Welcome to P English Literature, a YouTube channel that conveys Amazon, Goodreads, blog, and video book reviews coupled with interviews with authors. It's a perfect channel for book lovers, authors, and writers generally. P English Literature, the exact channel for you and me.
Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and to the review of A New Day Dawn, my solo journey into West Africa by Terry Lister. This is actually a travelogue detailing the author's adventure into four West African countries, and I find it quite awesome. I find it quite intriguing while I read through it because this seems to be the second travelogue novel that I've ever read so far. And there are a lot of things that I find quite intriguing about this book. There are a lot of facts that I find exceptional, and I was like, this book is gonna be a fit read for whoever wanting to move into West African to have a glimpse of what these countries are really all about. But before I talk about this book, I'd love to read to you about the author. I don't have a physical copy of this book. I read the ebook version, and it's very wholesome. So I'm going to be reading to you about Terry Lister. The Honorable Terry Lister is a traveler and a writer. He wasn't always. Previously, he was a partner in the Deloitte accounting firm, a minister in the government of Bermuda, and a realtor. Always a traveler, he retired at 60 and has been a solo traveler for the past 7 years, going on the road for 8 weeks, then home for 8 and then off again. When he retired, he had been to 44 countries, but between November 2017 and December 2019, the number increased to 96, spending between 1 and 6 weeks in these countries. His first book, Immersed in West Africa, tells the tales of 8 adventure-filled weeks in 5 West African countries. Since then, he has been to 19 additional African countries. When not traveling, Lister relaxes with a good book which must be historical or biographical. His love for travel means he always has a few travel books on the go as preparation for the next trip. Lister spends as much time as he can with family when at home. With that little time he has left, he is a sports fan, cricket and football being his favorite game. So little time to be bored. This book actually details the author's journey into 4 West African countries, starting from Sierra Leone to Liberia to Ivory Coast and Ghana. The author actually began his journey from Sierra Leone to Liberia and Ivory Coast and finally ends it at Ghana. There's a kind of thing I admire about this book, and that's the fact that at each spot that the author wrote about his experience in any of these countries, he made reference to history, he made reference to the situation in the country, he made reference to the political instability in such countries, and he made reference to points or places of tourist attraction. And I think that there's a kind of a trait, a kind of a feature that added more charm to the making of this book. From Sierra Leone. You know, Sierra Leone is one of the poorest countries in Africa with a GDP per capita of $484, and because Sierra Leone has faced some bloody war in time past, it led to it being one of the poorest countries in Africa, and its devastating experience of the Ebola outbreak some times back made it very terrible. And when the author visits Sierra Leone, I love the fact that he was able to make mention to some places he visited in place of historical attraction, and I love the fact that at each point of the journey he always made reference to the things that he find intriguing to himself I love the fact that the author's visit to Sierra Leone delve into the history of the Sierra Leone St. George Church, which was established by the Black Nova Scotian, and the church take approximately 11 years to be completed. That's from 1817 to 1828. I also love the fact that the author's writing here delve into the story of Thomas Peter, who is once considered as one of the founding fathers of Sierra Leone. Thomas Peter, from research, is actually a Nigerian who was taken into slavery in some part of the world and later returned to Sierra Leone, and its impact towards the development of Sierra Leone is very impactful. When I read through the part of the author's experience in Sierra Leone, and he wrote about a particular place where they do mine diamond, it made me remember one of these, Sierra Leone war movie that I watched when I was much younger, titled Blood Diamond. The story kept unfolding, and the author arrived Liberia from Sierra Leone. Liberia is one of those oldest republics in Africa that first gained its independence, and it's one of those poorest countries in Africa with a GDP per capita of $583. And the impoverishment of these countries can be traced back to the old time brutal civil war that it had. Liberia had two brutal civil wars. First one happening from 1989 to 1996, which take a good 7 years, and the second one occurring between 1999 to 2003, making it a total of 11 years of brutal civil war. So this war is one of those things that lead to the poverty rate being increased in Liberia. And I love the fact that while the author arrived here, he was also able to point out to some historical event, to the extinction of most wildlife, and to some other things or some other problem that affects these countries. There's a particular part I find very humorous when I read through this book. The book is actually very humorous. I'll be making mention of some other part that I find quite humorous in the later part of this review. When at the point of the author entering Liberia from Sierra Leone, he goes to the Liberian border. It's a custom for whoever is traveling to fulfill the earth regulation. And the health officer at the Liberian border told him that, there's a wide outbreak of meningitis in Liberia, and that he needs to show the proof of his immunization against meningitis. And, the author wrote that he remembered that in time past, one of his friends died as a result of this disease, and since then he has been very sensitive to it. After a long time of conversation, he expects the health officer to take him to probably an health center where he's going to be immunized or receive vaccine against meningitis. And what the health officer told him was that, oh, don't worry, just give me $20 and I'll make the right entry on your card, and I'll just show you that you're already immunized so you can pass. And I will show you that you're already immunized so that you can pass. And he wrote that he was very shocked. He considered it quite weird. That's one of the things that takes one of very rampaging in most African countries, and that's a fact that most places are full of bribery and corruption. From here, I was able to denote that, bribery and corruption is not something that is only particular to the government position. It's almost in every area, every parastatus and every sector. And it's one of those, difficult things, those bad things that still aid most African countries, in a deteriorating condition because of bribery and corruption. And this part is quite very, very humorous. And I was like, wow, that's very serious. So after a long time of conversation, I think he settled giving him $10, and he allowed him to pass freely. So his experience in Liberia is actually very intriguing. I love the fact that he also made reference to history, and that's one of the reasons why I actually find this book quite intriguing, because I left a review of the book on Amazon with a caption that is a travel log detailing, having to do with history, and it is extremely well researched. And that was one of the reasons why I actually give the book a 5/5 review on Amazon. While reading through the author's experience in Liberia, I also read about, the impact of the Chinese in the health sectors or other sectors in Liberia, and I was quite intrigued with it because I actually haven't heard much about Chinese impact in Liberia has been very vast and quite impactful to this manner. So I think that's one of the traits that added more intriguing characteristics to the book on itself. After the author spent days in Liberia, he proceeded into journeying to Ivory Coast. This is another segment of the journey, and there's something I find quite intriguing about this book. It's at the point whereby the author is, the author is actually an American. So for an American to be visiting Africa can be somewhat humorous at some instance, because most of the situations or the things he's used to in terms of transportation, in terms of communication method, it's different when it comes to Africa. And from all the countries he visited, I think it's only Syria alone and Ghana that speaks English. So the other countries like Ivory Coast speaks French, Liberia too speaks English, so he was able to communicate with some people at some certain part during the journey, while to some other part he found it difficult to communicate. His arrival in Ivory Coast is very funny. One of the things I'm going to mention in this review is where he met a taxi driver who took more than the actual price to take him to a particular place. I think it was charged 5,500 cefas for a particular journey that ought to be 1,500 cefas. And I actually love a sense of bargaining. At this point, he was able to know that, oh yeah, anytime I'm gonna indulge myself with some other African nation, then I should be able to bargain. And because bargaining prices is one of those necessary thing that anyone who is visiting Africa for the first time should know. At some point I laugh because it's very, very rampant here. It's something that you should know, because most seller would expect you to bargain a price. A bottle of water, they can tell you that a bottle of water costs maybe 500 naira and you're expected to bargain it to probably 100 naira. It's a rampant feature that anyone who is buying things in any of the African nations, I don't know about other places, but most of the African nations should be able to bargain, because they will tell you a price of a particular commodity or item far more than the actual price. Take for instance, a particular item might cost, for instance, if I should judge based on Nigerian naira, can cost like 500 naira and the actual price, but they will tell you 2,500, expecting you to bargain. So if you cannot bargain, then you end up giving them 2,500, and you dash them the remaining the remaining fee. I love this book because it's very humorous, and it made me feel, I was able to feel it and digest it, because I myself am an African. Another part again is where he wrote about one of the largest churches in Africa that was located in Ivory Coast. And that's one of the reasons why I actually find this book very counterintuitive, because I find that while it make a good historical book, there are some facts that are mentioned in the book that needed to be checked, because most of the facts there are not, are mostly outdated. Africa is one of the developing countries. If you've been to Africa probably last year and you're revisiting the country, there will be some sort of development and changes. And again, one thing that most Westerners do have, one of the notions they do have towards most of the African nations, that it's a bush or it's a typical forest or something related to that, which is mostly not the case. There are some development in some certain areas that are quite obvious, even though it cannot be mostly compared to other countries that are well developed. I mentioned in my review on Amazon that the book has some facts that are outdated. It has some notion that if you are to weigh it to what is presently happening, it is far outdated, and because there are new development in most of the African nations in the past recent years or the past months. There's another fact I'd love to mention in my review, and that's the fact that the author's visit to Ivory Coast expound on the extinction of wildlife. Ivory Coast is one of those great countries that uses elephant, that has great number of elephant, but due to the barbaric, the uncultured exploitation of this animal, they are gradually going into extinction. And that's one of the things that is baffling most of the African nation, is the fact that they are not well reserved when it comes to the conservation and the preservation of natural resources. You can see there's an indiscriminate falling of deforestation trees in most countries, deforestation, extinction of wildlife, etc. And these are sort of issues and human doing that is causing bad influence on the ecosystem in a kind of a way that people are nonchalant towards it. Oh, I'm not concerned because we live here, and most people often consider this thing. They often look at it as something that is not much more important. He also left Ivory Coast and moved into Ghana. I love his experience in Ghana. I love the fact that from his description tone, he made something positive about Ghana as being a very beautiful country. Went to the capital city, Accra, and was able to. He loved the society. He loved that they even speak English there, and able to visit some of the Cape Coast castles where some slaves were captured in time past. His experience or his idea about Ghana is somewhat positive. His tone towards Ghana is somewhat positive and encouraging compared to his tone towards other countries that he has been to. One funny thing I love to ship into this review is when the author was traveling from Ivory Coast to Ghana, he wrote in the book that he actually traveled through the road. He entered bus, and because these countries border each other, from Sierra Leone to Liberia to Ivory Coast to Ghana, they border each other, and he was able to move by the road. He wrote when he was crossing Ivory Coast to Ghana, that at a particular time around 6 p.m. the car was still moving, and the bus was moving rather, and there was no street light, there was no moonlight. They were driving in absolute darkness, and it felt like screaming. So I felt to read that part out. That's on page 90 of 200. Over the next 60 minutes, we recovered 18 miles. And this was a good life. By 7 p.m. we were driving in pitch darkness. There were no road light, no moonlight, nothing. The rate of ground cover reduced. In the next hour, in the dark, we covered 8 miles. Can you imagine? I wanted to scream. Fortunately for my sanity, I fell asleep. I laughed when I read to this part. I was like, oh yeah, because we're welcoming you to Africa. All in all, Terry Lee Stark's My Solo Journey into West Africa, it's a book that I find quite intriguing. I find it absolutely amazing. I love the author's choice of words. His writing style is quite intriguing. His storytelling techniques is very amazing. This is the first book that I've read from this author, and I look forward to reading more of his future books. And I absolutely love this book. It is very intriguing to me. It's more or less like a memoir, a travelogue detailing his experience in the 4 African countries, starting from Sierra Leone to Liberia to Ivory Coast to Ghana. And at each description, at each journey, I love the fact that each journey expound on history, expound on the tourist attraction, mostly common in these countries I visited, and the political instability and the situation of the countries was reviewed at each point. It made the book read like a historical novel. However, I was expecting that the author would write about Nigeria, because Nigeria is one of those West African countries, but he didn't visit Nigeria. So this book is actually very intriguing. I left the link in the description part of this review if you would like to get a copy directly on Amazon. It's something that I find very fascinating. It's actually a fascinating read, and it's one of those travelogue novel that I find very pleasurable. So this way I'm gonna stop this review because I don't want to talk too much about it. I don't want to spoil the book. I just want to give you a short, though this seems to be more than a short review, recommendational video book review of Terry Lee Stark's A New Day Dawns, My Solo Journey into West Africa. It's currently available on Amazon for some few dollars if you would like to get a copy, and it is very, very intriguing. I solely recommend it if you would like to get a copy of the book. This is where I'm gonna be stopping my review of this book. If you watch this video to this point and you're yet to click on the subscribe button, I want to urge you to please click on the subscribe button over there, like the video, consider turning on the notification bell to get notified anytime I release new videos, and let me know your thoughts about this book in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching my video book review of Terry Lee Stark's New Day Dawn, My Solo Journey into West Africa. Thank you very much for watching. See you in my next video.